January. For me, this is always the point in winter where the cold starts getting tedious. The crisp breezes of October that kick off the slide into winter are always welcome, and of course the many December holidays keep everything festively draped in string lights and other decor. But by the time January rolls around, it's starting to feel like we're running out of ideas. Let's see, we got quarterly taxes, a dentist appointment, and nothing, because everyone is taking a well-deserved break, in part because the YouTube ad revenue absolutely craters after Christmas. And while we're talking about cold things, here's a cold take for you. I miss when TV shows were longer. When a series didn't need to be the hottest, most viewed thing in the world on its opening week for it to get a hope of resolving its storylines in a second or third season. I don't know the technical industry reasoning behind the 12 and 8 episode season drops we're getting now, but I know it's not healthy. The poor things are starving. There's barely any meat on those bones. And it might be the greener grass talking, but the current dire state of seasonal TV is making me reevaluate some widely held beliefs from the days when TV shows could, as a rule, run for 7+ seasons and never be more than kinda fine. For instance, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that filler is actually good. Now, before I defend myself, we should lay down a definition of what exactly we're talking about here. In the common parlance, filler generally refers to an episode or episodes of a show that don't serve to advance the central overarching plot. The term gets a lot of play in anime specifically to refer to episodes that are added to the anime to fill space that was not originally in the manga. For example, Dragon Ball Z caught up to its manga during the Namek saga, and because the anime couldn't go past where the manga was at during such a pivotal moment, whole episodes of the original Frieza fight are just nothing. Just the characters staring at each other and having flashbacks and occasionally dropping threatening one-liners while Akira Toriyama works his butt off in the background drawing more chapters of the actual plot. These anime-only delaying tactics are a classic form of filler, and they're not just restricted to single episodes. Some anime have had whole filler seasons where the protagonists are kept busy with some non-canonical bad guy while the manga can continue in the background, building up a healthy backlog of canon stories for them to adapt next. Because these filler episodes are original to the show and not canon to the source material, there's a hard limit to how much they can permanently affect the status quo. If a filler arc steals or destroys our protagonist's iconic accessory, it's guaranteed that by the end of it they will have gotten it back somehow, since they can't just not have it for the rest of the canon series. No major characters can permanently die, no relationships can be permanently altered, no important villains can experience trajectory-altering victories or defeats. The story still has to align with the source material in which this filler arc never happened, so it can't leave too much of a lasting mark on the events that come after it. Now, this specific definition of filler isn't widely applicable outside the space of anime, but the core concept can be found in plenty of other shows. A filler episode in these contexts might, for instance, be made as the result of budgetary limitations or a writer's strike. For instance, a show that's out of money for the season might fill a week with a low-cost bottle episode that all takes place in a single cheap set, or maybe make a clip show recapping some previous events. In these cases, the filler episode buys time for the show to get back on track after some outside interference, whether that's the budget or the actually good writing team. It's filler in the sense that it's literally filling time. If the show could have gone on hiatus instead and nothing would have meaningfully changed, it's probably filler. And that's a good, snappy definition, but it's not universally useful since it relies on the story having a central overarching plotline for the filler episode to put on pause. It can be a little harder to suss out what constitutes filler in series without that central plot. Anthology series or episodic thing-of-the-week formats can be a little dicier to diagnose because technically most, if not all, episodes in these formats would be skippable without missing any sort of central arc. In the case of the anthology series, it's because there usually is no central arc, while a thread of the week or a procedural story usually has character arcs that gradually advance throughout the series, but no large-scale project they're steadily working towards completing. So if almost any episode is skippable, which ones are filler and which ones aren't? Which episodes of The Twilight Zone are filler? Which episodes of Star Trek? Which episodes of Columbo? Is the concept even meaningful in these kinds of shows? Well, if you believe the internet and its many listicles, it absolutely is. People love to know which episodes of a long-running TV show aren't worth their time so they can more efficiently get to the good stuff. And is that what filler is? A waste of time? By these definitions, it certainly seems that way. If the show could have gone on hiatus instead and nothing would have changed, that kinda sounds like the filler episode is by definition a waste of time. But the time is only wasted if it isn't fun. I mean, there's an angle that holds any TV as a waste of time. What makes it not a waste is that it serves its purpose of being entertaining. TV shows exist to entertain, and as long as they're doing that, they're succeeding where it matters most, whether or not high art is being produced. Having seen my share of online arguments about what is and is not filler, I think hidden in the way people use the word filler is a very complicated question of audience expectations. Different things are expected from different kinds of shows. A long-running series with a core central storyline usually has an audience that expects the show to deliver that storyline, which means any episodes that don't advance that central plot could be written off as filler, but more accurately, as not what they wanted or expected from the show and what it promised them. An anthology series is not expected to have an overarching plotline at its center, so episodes that are self-contained, goofy little antics don't read as filler because they aren't padding time that would otherwise be spent on hardier stuff. But on the flip side, that means any episode that's kinda boring or unfulfilling or unusually low stakes could easily be skipped as filler since it's not entertaining to watch, and individually entertaining episodes are the only thing an audience expects from an anthology. Someone watching an anime might be expecting it to adapt the manga it's adapting, so any anime-only plotlines might be scraped off the plate and discarded because they're not what the audience expected. So by this model, filler is any part of a show that the audience doesn't care about. But this is a very risky definition to settle on because it's entirely subjective. Sure, maybe some of the audience doesn't like the low-stakes breather episode of the normally high-octane adventure, but for an audience who's invested in the characters, a low-stakes breather episode can be exactly what they wanted. If a show is balancing chill slice of life with some high-stakes secret drama underpinning it, some audiences might feel like the low-stakes slice of life part is a waste of time, even though it's necessary to contrast and add stakes to the secret drama part. With that on the table, there's an underlying pacing consideration in storytelling that filler is actually kind of central to. Audiences love highlight reels and best-of compilations and all the good bits with none of the fluff in between. It's me, I'm audiences. But if a story just did that from the get-go, chaining all the most dramatic plot-central events together with no space between them, the impact of each crucial moment would be severely deadened because the audience has no time to appreciate the status quo before it's disrupted again. If we don't get to know the peaceful home village, we won't care when it's burned down. But that time spent in the peaceful home village is filler. It's not advancing the plot, it's just burning time and getting the audience acclimated, and investing them in what the world looks like before the plot destroys it, and therefore maybe what the world could look like again once our heroes finish the plot and go home. Just because something isn't advancing the plot doesn't mean it's not structurally necessary. An establishing shot can't be cut in the edit just because nobody is visibly doing plot stuff on screen. The purpose of the shot is different, to provide an environment and context so the audience can better understand and feel the plot stuff they're about to see. But I don't think it's necessarily useful to break down the concept of storytelling so far that I start arguing shit like filler is actually the binding energy that holds all narrative together, so let's pull back from the fraying edges of my definition here. Sure, filler might be a hard concept to lock in on an anthology series or a monster of the week episodic adventure or a slice of life chill vibes only kind of time, but it's easy when there's a central overarching plotline at play. Filler is any part of that story that does not affect that central plot. Filler takes time to do something else instead, and to make sure there are no messy consequences, filler will always be careful to reset the status quo at the end. Filler is a self-contained little plot cul-de-sac dropped into the flow of a story to route the characters through a side adventure before rejoining the main canon relatively unchanged. And in the specific context of anime, filler is generally an adventure that was not canonical to the manga source material being adapted, but has been added anyway for fun and flavor and to buy the poor cartoonist time to draw more stuff. Filler can take the form of individual episodes or whole arcs, typically with new original bad guys for the heroes to deal with while they try to get back on track. Now, perhaps a little controversially, I am going to expand this definition of filler to include the concept of the tie-in movie. This is another extremely common anime thing where a non-canonical story that could be done as a filler arc is instead bundled up into a dense 1 to 2 hour adventure and released as a self-contained movie. It's got all the same narrative parameters as a typical filler arc and usually works the same way, which is why I'm looping it in even though it's not exactly filling space in a season. My cold take was that I missed when shows were longer. My boiling hot take is that part of the reason for that cold take is because I adore these non-canonical filler arcs. Not all of them. Let's be so clear. Lots of filler arcs are very tedious or repetitive. It's extremely common for a non-canonical filler villain to bear a suspicious resemblance to a canon villain so that the show doesn't need to come up with a completely original threat, leading to all the Dragon Ball movies where the threat is surprise it's more Saiyans or surprise it's more androids. It's also common for non-canonical filler arcs to recycle beats and moments from the original series in a way that can sometimes devalue the impact of the original moment, because a filler story can't exactly come up with a brand new move or power-up since that would theoretically have consequences that affect the main plot. So kind of the only option is to reuse something they're already established to be able to do. Then again, some of them do make up new power-ups and moves, which can potentially turn into continuity problems when the canon timeline picks back up again. And because a filler arc has a dubious relationship with canonicity, sometimes shit can happen that fully breaks the rules of the universe, like in the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood tie-in movie where someone successfully performs human transmutation and brings her brother back to life at the cost of one leg. That one must have felt real good for the Elrics to watch. But despite this, despite all these factors that put the writing at risk, some of the most fun I've had with anime has been in these non-canonical filler arcs in movies. And believe me, I have been very curious to figure out why that is. So to start off, there are a few factors to filler that I think help contribute to their fun potential. As established, filler cannot permanently change or harm the status quo. If a central character is dead, they won't be by the end of it. If someone is turned evil or run off by themselves, we know this is a temporary arrangement that will be cleanly resolved in a timely fashion. Amnesia? Fixable. Soul captured? Fixable. Possessed by some ultimate evil or another? Fixable. This is basically a narrative safety net, a meta-level assurance to the audience that even if things look scary and dire, everything's gonna be okay and it'll all go back to normal. And it also means that in the meantime, the story can go absolutely crazy. So long as there's some kind of reset button waiting at the end of the arc, the story can shape up the status quo to an absurd degree. In some cases, it almost feels like it's intentionally designed to make the audience wonder how the hell everything is supposed to get back in order by the end of the arc. One of the tie-in movies for Inuyasha opens with the overarching main series villain being defeated in a climactic final battle, and then everyone just kinda has to deal with the consequences of that. They blow up the entire Earth in DBZ Resurrection of F. There's always a way to reshuffle the story back into shape, but in the interim, the writers have total free reign to go bonkers. And part of the reason that's comforting is because if you've ever gotten invested in a long-running show, and then you sort of start to see the warning signs that maybe the plot is going in a direction that you think is bad or stupid, and a lot of the writing things you've noticed, the setup and the planting and the Chekhov's guns start feeling like Schrodinger's bad writing, where the planned ending of the story is a black box, and until the box is opened, the writing is simultaneously good and bad. It can be kind of comforting to not have to deal with that specific anxiety. With a filler arc, you know that by the end, everything is gonna go back to normal, whatever normal looks like for this particular show. As another benefit, filler episodes and tie-in movies have a time limit within which they have to resolve all these exciting new problems. They can't just drag on forever, which is a problem that can afflict both filler arcs and non-filler arcs of TV. In a single self-contained filler installment, everything has to be wrapped up quickly and effectively as soon as the main plot is supposed to pick back up, which, along with the status quo safety net, guarantees that whatever story they're doing for filler, it has to be efficiently told with a thorough resolution. This brevity is not guaranteed with filler arcs, which have been known to drag on almost indefinitely, but it is a factor for why some self-contained filler stories can feel like a single bite-sized bit of delicious, consequence-free fun. I personally tapped out of watching Bleach in the middle of a filler arc because the pacing was dragging so much and I knew nothing was actually getting accomplished. But I've really enjoyed some of the Bleach tie-in movies that do the exact same kind of thing, just faster. Some stories benefit from taking 30 episodes to get anywhere, but for some of them, a tight 90 minutes is all they really need, and the restrictions on a filler storyline can guarantee that the story will be a nice closed loop that can be traversed in a reasonably short length of time. These factors, in concert, work together to enable the heart of the filler fun potential, putting the characters in situations. We touched on this earlier, but while filler might not advance the plot, it can still be very interesting if you're invested in the characters, because it gives us a chance to see them in a new context grappling with a new situation. Even the most low-stakes slice-of-life filler episode can potentially be very interesting if, for instance, the characters in that episode never get to do chill low-stakes slice of life. And a lot of these fillers are far from chill low-stakes slice of life. If we're already familiar with these characters thanks to, for instance, multiple lengthy seasons getting to know them in the context of their main plot, then getting to see them in a new context facing new challenges can be extremely juicy. We know it can't disrupt the status quo too much, so whatever they're dealing with isn't going to do any permanent damage, but until they're done with it, they can be going through some wild challenges that the main plotline has no time or no inclination to explore. This can also be used to put some focus on secondary characters who might have slipped out of focus in the main plot. A filler story is a side quest, a break from the main overarching threat to deal with something different and weird instead. We've put the plot on hold so we can take a trip to the beach. Instead of unraveling this mysterious conspiracy, we've got to get ready for the school dance. This week we're not fighting Naraku, we're going to the moon to fight Princess Kaguya. Field trip! It's the loss of these character-focused, lower-stakes adventures that make me really miss filler episodes in the current slimmed-down season orders, because there really is nothing better for characterization than letting the protagonists just kinda mess around and hang out in between the high-stakes plot-centric shenanigans. Characters dealing with the key events of the main plot are usually stuck in a fairly reactive state, handling threats and problems as they arrive and following plot hooks to the next part of the main story. It's only outside of the main plot where the characters get to be proactive instead, and we get to see what they get up to intentionally when they're not constantly reacting to crises and playing catch-up with the main plot. Of course, it's not just the chill filler that reveals new and exciting sides to our heroes. The extremely unchill filler can be revelatory in all kinds of ways. For instance, in one of the Bleach tie-in movies, Fade to Black, a couple non-canonical filler villains erase everyone's memories of one of the main characters, Rukia, so they can kidnap her. But in doing so, accidentally make make everyone also forget about main protagonist Ichigo, because Rukia was responsible for his episode 1 inciting incident that inducted him into the plot. So from the perspective of every other character, this unbelievably strong stranger just shows up out of nowhere with powers that rival all of their most important guys, and he knows them all by name and won't stop yelling about how they have to go save this other person they don't think exists. This is structurally a soft redux of a major arc in an early season where Ichigo has to fight all these guys for real on the road to rescuing Rukia from bureaucratic bullshit. So we've actually already seen a lot of these matchups. The fights are not what's exciting about this premise because we've already seen versions of them, and Ichigo has only gotten stronger, so they're gonna be a lot less challenging. But because we've already seen these fights, we also know how terrifyingly dangerous some of these guys are, which is why it's tense when they show up and consider killing him, and why it's rewarding to see them not do that, and instead try to use their brains to figure out what the hell is going on. And this puts some character focus on these secondary characters in a new and interesting context. It's kinda nice that two of the guys who were the biggest problems in the Season 1 rescue mission are actually thinking things through this time and end up as some of the first people who choose to help out this mysterious stranger, because there's just something about him that makes them not want to shred him with a souped-up magic sword attack. One of them's actually forgotten about his own crazy sword power-up because he got it in consequence of the erased character, and it's really funny to see him so absolutely hyped showing it off when he gets it back, where Ichigo's just kind of exasperated because of course he's already seen it, like multiple times. This is fun character banter, neatly encapsulated in a safe, questionably canon 90 minutes, and it's tremendously enjoyable. A non-canonical filler movie that ties into a series that on the whole I'm largely mid on manages to be extremely fun for me just by putting characters I'm familiar with in newly complicated situations that make them interact with each other in new ways. And I feel like that's gotta be the thing about filler that makes its highs hit so highly for me. This factor, and this factor alone, is also why I will die on the hill that Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 4, The Evil Bikers from Atlantis, is an absolutely peak piece of fiction. Just hear me out, okay? Now, okay, structurally, the season is a fairly normal filler arc. There's a new bad guy who used to be the king of Atlantis back in the day, and now he has a gang of evil bikers who go out and use evil trading cards to harvest souls to feed to a big snake. The evil trading cards make whoever's using them a little more evil, but it also might be psychosomatic. Now, Yugi and Yami are at this point 3 seasons deep in their life partnership thing, and the rapport is pretty much down to a science. When the story began, Yami was a mysterious, superpowered alter ego that took over whenever Yugi was in trouble, and vanished back into his mind palace when things were normal again. And that formula hasn't changed very much, although Yami has been playing out a personal character arc about figuring out his mysterious past as this ancient pharaoh in Egypt. Yugi does all the normal life stuff, but whenever a card game happens or some magical bullshit is afoot, Yami comes out and kicks ass. Whoever's not running the body is basically the other one's imaginary friend. So early on in the Evil Bikers from Atlantis season, Yami's doing a card game, as is his wont. But this one he is losing, and in order to avoid that, he plays the evil trading card. This unfortunately ups the ante, because it means whoever loses the duel now loses their soul, and to make matters worse, he proceeds to lose the duel. However, as established, there are 2 souls in play whenever he duels, so Yugi basically shoulder checks him out of the way and lets his soul get captured instead. This means for the entire rest of the season, Yami is all alone. There's nobody else in the body, and it's all his fault. A character who we've basically only ever seen in the context of doing card game stuff and then leaving, whose entire primary motivation has been to help Yugi, with unraveling his own mysterious past as kind of a distant second place, suddenly has to reckon with a whole bunch of other stuff, including a titanic weight of guilt for what he did, and the corresponding existential terror that he might be this innately evil person, and maybe the past he can't remember is one where he was some kind of monstrous tyrant, and that maybe this whole time it was only Yugi's presence that has been keeping him not evil. Yami's also kind of extremely freaking out in his desperation to get Yugi back, which leads to him reaching near Season 0 levels of brutality in a few cases. This season is so very silly, but that is a hell of a situation to drop our boy into, and the impact makes it more than worth the goofy stuff, at least when I watched it. On the character angle, it also brings back some old jobber villains of the week as minions to the season's big bad, but buffed and powered up with evil trading cards and significantly more malicious as a result, which gives Yami and the gang some highly personal rematches on the way to the final boss. There's a few other things that ensure this season holds a disproportionately special place in my heart. Most of them center on the fact that I personally don't find the card game all that interesting, especially when the rules keep changing. And I mostly end up feeling like it's an impediment to the legitimate stakes of the story, which is, you know, all the crazy shadow magic running around everywhere. Which means every time they get weird with it and add non-card game related personal stakes, I personally get a little more invested, which I recognize is a me problem. This is far from the most embarrassing Yu-Gi-Oh! Filler I unironically like. Filler is not a generally popular concept. Filler that's just there to pad out the runtime or paper over a lean week generally doesn't contribute much to the story overall. But it can. That's the thing. It's It's an opportunity. It's time. A chance to take a breather from doggedly advancing the main plotline and do something else instead. Something that fleshes out the world or the characters, or just lets the pacing cool off a little between disasters. In a streaming economy where creators have to fight tooth and nail for the privilege of just telling their story to completion at all, the thought of having extra episodes to spare on character exploration and secondary subplots is absurd. But it shouldn't be. Stories benefit tremendously from having space and time to breathe. They don't all use that time well, but some of them do, and most of them need the opportunity. Pacing is a delicate art, and while a story can suffer from being too bloated, hence the phrase "kill your darlings," encouraging writers to be brutal in the edit, a story can absolutely also suffer from being a speedrun of itself. Netflix has been doing these pared-down remakes of older anime that I think illustrate this extremely directly. The live-action remake of Yu Yu Hakusho is good for one episode and then frantically paced for the remaining 4, loosely trying to adapt 60 episodes into a fifth of that total runtime. And as a result of that speedrunning, the characterization is severely simplified. Everyone's asshole characteristics get cut for time and replaced with unproblematic, mild antisocial tendencies. And some of the most impactful moments in the original series are entirely lacking in punch in the remake because they have no build-up behind them. There's a lot to like about it, but it does not capture a lot of what made the original work. It has to be short, dense, and direct. No detours from the main plot, no redundancy. If there's a bad guy that got fought twice, in the remake, no they didn't. They got fought once and beaten on the first try. If a power-up was earned through slow, dangerous, painful training, no it wasn't, we don't have time. It's just a thing they can do now. If a former reprehensible villain gradually learned to trust and care for their allies after being inexplicably trusted and cared for in turn, actually they were never bad, because that would take too long. With no time to spare, the story is reduced to a bullet-pointed list of all the most crucial plot events and biggest fights. But there's a reason stories generally aren't told that way. It's not good for them. They need room to breathe and the chance to get a little silly with it, even if it results in something an audience might skip for a week. There are far worse fates. So, yeah.
I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday, and I still go. Ooh. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stops my mind from wandering.